Good evening and welcome to all of our viewers on KIMA Action News' YouTube channel and to the first of our 2024 election candidate debates. I'm John Kennedy O'Connor and I will be the moderator for all of our 9 debates we have scheduled. And to kick off the series tonight, the candidates for State District 14, Representative Seat 1, have been invited to answer your questions on the topics that matter to you ahead of casting your ballot this election. We will welcome your live comments while we're on the air. To comment, you just need to click the subscribe button and you will see yours and other comments on the right of your screen as they appear. However, we will not be putting any of your comments to the candidates during the debate. Now, we are pleased to welcome to the studio Democrat Chelsea Demas, who topped the poll in the August primary election for this seat. Welcome, Chelsea. Unfortunately, her opponent, Gloria Mendoza, the Republican who finished in second place, has declined the opportunity to take part in this debate. Ms. Mendoza's PR representative sent us this statement. We appreciate the opportunity and understand the importance of engaging in discussion, and that is why we are focusing on door-to-door campaigning. This grassroots approach allows her to engage in meaningful conversations with the voters directly and is essential for her campaign. Now, we have allowed 1 hour for each debate with the 2 candidates. Tonight, we will have a 30-minute broadcast, but the rules of this debate are the same as when other 2 candidates both decide to participate. I will ask a question that the candidates have not seen or heard before, and the candidates will have 2 minutes each to answer, followed by 1 further minute each for rebuttals. But since Gloria Mendoza has declined to participate, Chelsea Demas will be given up to 3 minutes to answer each question. Now, Chelsea has already recorded a personal statement, which you will find on our YouTube channel. Ms. Demas, thank you very much indeed for being with us tonight. And I'd like to start with the first question. And the first question comes from an Action News viewer here in Yakima. District 15 has seen many changes in boundaries and the electorate since the last election. How has this changed your election strategy and your policy platform? And Ms. Demas, you have 3 minutes to answer.
Yeah, thank you so much, John, and thank you everyone for having me here today. My voice is a little gone, just been working a little too hard, but I'm going to do my best to make sure that everyone understands me. Well, our district and really our area here in Central Washington is really no stranger to the district boundaries being redrawn. It's been an ongoing issue for a long time, and it has a lot to do with the voter dilution that has been happening for decades. And for me, I personally don't think that has necessarily impacted my strategy. I know this community very well. I have grown up here. I was raised here in Sunnyside, Washington, in the Yakima Valley. And for me, really, my only strategy has been connecting with community. That includes door-to-door knocking. It also includes being visible in community events, being available via email, via social media. Any ways that I can communicate with community, I'm going to do it. So for me, it comes to me as second nature to connect with community, as I have been involved throughout the Yakima Valley and in this district for a long time, doing social advocacy, social justice work with my nonprofit background. So as I stated before, my strategy is connecting with community and ensuring that they continue to really run my campaign and run my priorities. So that is all that I have.
Thanks so much, Chelsea. We appreciate that. And our second question tonight also comes from an Action News viewer here in Yakima. Both candidates in this race support improving education. How will you improve the education options for the children of the Yakima Valley? And Ms. Demas, again, you have 3 minutes to answer.
Yeah, thank you, John. I think that is a great question, and it's definitely a concern that I've been hearing at the doors and at community events. And for me, really the biggest way that I can ensure that community isn't concerned about education and the way it's going to be funded is, well, the capital gains tax. Right now, it's on the ballot this November, and for me, I personally believe that it's going to be incredibly detrimental to our communities here across the state, but especially in rural communities like ours. So I really would encourage community to read through their ballots and understand how the capital gains tax works and how it funds some of the most essential programs in our schools. And the other thing too, in general, I really want to explore different revenues that we can use to fund, schools and fund different state programs and such, because I do believe that Washington State has a very regressive tax code. So we're going to have to get creative to ensure that when we're looking at our ballots, we're not going to be dealing with the fear of whether or not we're still going to have this funding available, to fund our programs, to fund our schools. But the other thing too is I'm going to make sure that when we're working on a budget at the Washington State Legislature, that we are ensuring that our schools are going to be funded. I plan on working with all stakeholders, with different school districts, different community leaders, and other organizations that are doing the work and fighting for our families and children. I believe that school and education is essential for building well-equipped leaders, especially for future generations to come. So education will continue to be a top priority for me during this campaign and after. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chelsea. Now, I do want to remind viewers that Gloria Mendoza, the Republican candidate in this race, was invited multiple times to be part of this debate, but her PR company declined on her behalf. So moving on now to our third question tonight, which again comes from an Action News viewer here in Yakima. Now, aside from education, what do you consider the single biggest issue facing the voters of your district is? And if elected, how will you ensure you've made progress or indeed resolved that issue before the next election? And Chelsea, once again, you have 3 minutes to answer.
Wow, that is such a big question, and I honestly think it's a little difficult to pinpoint what the biggest issue is, but I definitely want to start with affordable housing and cost of living. As we've seen across our state, the cost of living has gone up, and this is a trend that we're seeing across the country, really, but especially in communities like ours. Again, we are a rural community, we are a working class community, and we really need our leaders to do more and do better, to find solutions for us so we can not just get by but thrive. One of the bills that really interested me that was considered this last legislative session is a rent stabilization bill. And this bill would have provided a cap on rent for many renters across the state, including our district. And if you look at statistics here for District 14, we have many renters. And so for me, I'd want to make sure that I'm championing for bills that are going to make housing more possible and also more affordable for our community. But not only that, I plan on working with all stakeholders, whether it's developers, whether it's community organizations, to ensure that we are coming up with solutions that keep people in their homes, whether they rent or they own, and whether or not, they're struggling with homelessness. I think a lot of the times when we're looking at these, quote unquote solutions, we tend to oust our unhoused neighbors. And I want to make sure that when we are creating policies, they are centered on people. I think a lot of the leaders that have, historically been in positions of leadership here in our district and in Central Washington have continued to put profit over people. And that just doesn't work. I mean, it hasn't worked, but it definitely doesn't work with me, with my own values, and with a lot of the struggles I've been seeing as I've hit the doors. So that is my plan, is working with any and all stakeholders and ensuring that all community is involved.
Well, thank you very much, Chelsea. Now let's move on to our fourth question tonight. This question also comes from an Action News viewer here in Yakima. Do you believe there has been a degradation in politicians' behaviour? And how do you make sure you remain out of personality politics? And Chelsea, once again, you have 3 minutes.
Yeah, I think that is a great question, especially with our climate in terms of politics the last few years. I definitely believe that there have been a lot of big personalities in politics, and it's almost feel like I'm on an episode of Black Mirror or some sort. But for me, what's been keeping me grounded is reminding myself what I'm doing and who I'm doing this for. And that's been my community. And so as much as I'm hearing things here and there about how, my opponent or other folks may feel about me because they're afraid of change, mostly because they know this change is going to impact their stable living, because a lot of these folks, I strongly believe, have gotten accustomed to profiting off of people. And I simply believe that that's just not the way we should be running the state, or, the leaders that are elected should be making decisions based off of. And so I really stay focused, by making time to be with my family, by talking to community as much as I can on or off the clock, because in reality, when you're running for office, there's no days off. And so really, connecting with all of these folks, hearing their stories, understanding their lived experiences and where they're coming from, meeting their families, their kids, and so on, is what reminds me that, this is bigger than me. This is bigger than all of us. We're a part of this historic election where we can finally elect people who look like the majority, who understand, who speak the language, who have been through the same struggles, who shop at the same grocery stores as you do. And so really that's what continues to keep me centered and ensuring that, I stay committed to this clean campaign as I have since I've begun.
Well, thank you so much, Chelsea. And I do want to remind everyone once again who's watching, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel, and that will give you access to the live chat to the right of your screen. And we'll hope you'll join in the discussion. But let's move on to our fifth question tonight. This question comes from an Action News viewer in our own neighbourhood of Terrace Heights. In the statement that all Yakima voters received in their voter guide prior to the primary election, both candidates in this race mentioned that they are leaders in the first 10 words. How is your leadership well-rounded for all situations that you might find yourself in should you win this election? And Chelsea, once again, you have 3 minutes to answer.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's another great question. I've been a longtime servant leader for a very long time, since the beginning of my career and even before that. My parents being immigrants to this country, in search of a better life, they really taught me the importance of servant leadership, to always serve with your heart and to always put people before you. And so I've been going to protests and rallies, to events where community is organizing since I was a child. Early on, I found out that one of my biggest talents has been speaking up for others, especially those who may not feel like they have a voice. And so that immediately drew me into the world of communications. That is the work that I do. But also because as a young child, as the oldest, I played a instrumental part in ensuring my parents were informed. I translated documents for them, whether those were rental agreements, whether those were paperwork that they were signing for work, and so on. So I know that a lot of community resonates with that, because I'm not alone in that. But also, really, when I look back at nonprofits, everything from Habitat for Humanity, Toppenish School District, Sunnyside School District, the Diversity Center of Santa Cruz. I'm a commissioner for the Human Rights Commission for the state. I've been a comm staffer for the Washington State Legislature. So I have experience working with at least 18 legislators in my direct team. But also, really, I have lived here and I have been a survivor of poverty. And for me, I asked myself, why is it that only a few of us have been able to beat it? Why do we not all have access to these opportunities? And that's essentially why I decided that I was going to run, because I understand these struggles and I want to make sure that no one gets left behind, that everyone has a seat at the table, that all voices are centered. And that might sound like a utopian thought, but I honestly believe it's absolutely possible with the right leaders elected.
Well, thank you very much indeed to Chelsea for that answer. And I do want to once again remind viewers just joining us that Gloria Mendoza, the Republican candidate in this race, was invited multiple times to be part of this debate, but her PR representative declined on her behalf. So moving on now to our sixth question, which comes from an Action News viewer in Moxie. In this race, both, again, you have 3 minutes to answer.
Absolutely. I mean, the whole reason why redistricting happened is because we're trying to center the voices of, some of the most oppressed communities in this district. This district has a majority of Latinx, Hispanic, Indigenous folks. So I definitely think it's a win when we have several Latinx, Indigenous candidates. For me, the redistricting efforts is really an opportunity for more people that look like the community to step up and run. And so for me, I think that this is a great opportunity for all. And I just encourage community to, before they cast their vote, that they really see who shows up and really who is here for the people more than anything.
Well, thank you very much, Chelsea. Let's move on now to question number 7. And this question comes from an Action News viewer here in Yakima. If you are elected, you will spend most of your time in Olympia. How will you remain connected to the issues and challenges that your district faces? And once again, Chelsea, you have 3 minutes to answer.
Yeah, I think that is an excellent question. I've been hearing that a lot because a lot of folks are worried about, well, what's going to happen when we elect you? Are you just going to disappear? Are you not going to be available? That's simply not true. I definitely believe that I'm going to do everything in my power to remain visible in this community. Even in my time as a comm staffer, during the time of COVID, we were doing a lot of things from home. So I was still able to maintain my connection to the community. And I see myself as someone who wants to challenge that policy, because I firmly believe if we want to make these changes for our community, then we need to be here, not in Olympia, not anywhere else. Though I do think that it's essential for some key things that I do need to be there in person. I firmly believe that if I'm going to be getting feedback, meeting with community, I need to meet them where they are at. Definitely traveling to the west side on a daily basis is not possible for community. So how are we going to ensure that they stay connected? Well, for me, that looks like some sort of hybrid sense of the role where I can be in Olympia part-time, but also meet with community at my office in Sunnyside or throughout the Yakima Valley so I can hear directly from them. But also, if that's not a possibility, I'm going to make sure that I'm available through email, through phone, through social media, whatever I can do, because their involvement is going to be critical if we're going to pass bills that influence and positively impact our community. So I want to also, after the election, I want to make sure that we're starting to educate our community of what the legislative session looks like and what's needed from them to be able to pass a bill. And those things include, being able to give testimony live, whether in person or remotely, signing in pro or against different bills, getting familiar with being able to track bills and what they mean and what they could do for our communities. So really, we're going to have to start with the basics with our community, but I'm going to do everything in my power to be here where I belong. So thank you.
Well, thank you much, Chelsea. And once again, I do want to remind viewers who are just joining us that Gloria Mendoza, the Republican candidate in this race, was invited multiple times to be part of this debate. We never heard from her directly, but her PR representative declined on her behalf. And moving on now to our sixth question, which comes from an Action News viewer in Moxie. In the race for both state representative seats in the 14th district, there is a Republican and a Democrat running. Do you work together with your party counterpart for the benefit of both of your elections across both seats? And that's actually for 14th and 15th district. I think that's what that question means. And again, Chelsea, you have 3 minutes to answer.
Okay. Well, for me, I'm here to work with everybody. It doesn't matter how they identify, whether they're Republican, whether they're Democratic or independent. I have said this time and time again, and I know it may frustrate some people, but I don't have loyalty to a party. Though I am running as a Democrat because those are where my values align the most, I'm here to work for the people. The loyalty I have is not to a party. It's definitely not to an elected official or a politician, but it's to the community, to the people. Because as I've stressed along my campaign trail, is that I'm here to serve you. So whatever your request is, your priorities, your worries, I'm going to do what it takes to make it happen. And that's going to include having tough and uncomfortable conversations with people that, are elected that may not want to work with me, that may not like me just because I'm running as a Democrat or because of, coming from Central Washington. I'm going to do what it takes. I've had to do difficult work in the past. I've worked hard my whole life. So this is not going to be any different to ensure I bring results and I pass bills for community.
Thank you, Chelsea. And our next question comes from an Action News viewer in Terrace Heights. Do you worry for your personal safety and that of your family? And in a public race, how do you protect them from the spotlight and any potential dangers? Now, this comes really from a question, I think, a couple of weeks ago, one of our state senators was threatened, and I know security has become an issue. So, Ms. Demas, once again, you have 3 minutes to answer.
Yeah, I definitely am no stranger to having my public safety or security and personal life, not being protected or threatened. I ran a couple years ago for a city council race in 2021 where I lost by about 100 votes or so. And during that time, even though it was, a smaller race, I still had to deal with lots of harassment, messages through social media, threats, on emails. I even got tailed. This time around, it's honestly not any different. I've gotten a lot of messages from people that, are angry that someone like me is running, a queer woman of color with immigrant parents who has survived poverty. But you know what? As much as that is difficult sometimes, and I have my hard days, it's what keeps me going, because I know one day there's going to be someone else like me that's going to come up and step up and run for this position. So I want to inspire, youth everywhere, especially BIPOC youth here in our community, that they too can run. And hopefully, during my time while I'm in this position, we can pass legislation where we ensure that our elected officials are protected, because regardless if you're a Democrat or Republican or whatever party you come from or where you come from, you should not be threatened by anybody. Our safety is absolutely essential. And so I'm going to do everything that it takes to ensure that everyone is protected, whether they're running for office or not.
Well, thank you very much, Chelsea. And our final question in the first of our election candidate debates, comes from an Action News viewer here in Yakima. Will you accept the result of this election, no matter what the outcome? And Ms. Demas, once again, You have 3 minutes to answer.
Thank you. Absolutely. At the end of the day, community is the big decider on what's going to happen. And all I can ask is that, everybody comes out and votes. It doesn't matter if you're voting for me or not. Please vote. This is your right, as a citizen, as an American. Please stand up and show, our state that we do care here in Central Washington, that we want to have a say in who we're electing. At the end of the day, I'm going to accept the outcome, but I feel very good about the work we've been doing. I won my primary. I've been working hard. I've been showing up to everything. Even when I don't have a voice, I am here because there are no days off truly when you are working for the people. And so that's what I plan on doing. However, as someone who believes in accountability, I am definitely not going to hide or disappear. My work in community is going to continue, and I'm going to make sure that whoever ultimately takes on this role, as well as the other positions across Central Washington, are going to respond to community and are held at a high standard and held accountable if they're not showing up for community. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Chelsea. And I must remind viewers, if you're hearing a little bit of a rasp in Chelsea's voice. She hasn't been very well, but we do very much appreciate that you came here today to answer our viewers' questions. And that's all of our time for our first 2024 election candidate debate. I want to thank Chelsea Demas very sincerely for being with us tonight and for taking our viewers' questions. And I want to thank you for watching and for all of your questions and comments. Once again, we are sorry that the Republican candidate, Gloria Mendoza, declined our invitation to debate with her opponent, but we hope you have found this discussion helpful in making up your mind for the upcoming election in this race. Our next debate is on Monday, October the 14th at 7 p.m, when the candidates for Washington Legislative District 15, Representative Seat 2, will be invited to join us here in the KIMA Action News studio. We will once again be live on our YouTube channel at 7 p.m. We hope you'll join us then. Good night.